Thinking about moving to Portugal? Or maybe you're already here and settling in, but there's a hidden challenge you need to be prepared for. Renewing your residency isn't always straightforward, and for some, it's been more frustrating than expected. So, what's really going on, and how can you avoid getting caught in the chaos? To break it all down, we're joined by Diogo, an immigration lawyer who's been guiding foreigners through this process.
Diogo, why are people having such a hard time renewing?
There are several factors that can contribute to that. Actually, the fact that the government has decided to create a measure at the time of lockdown for all the documents to be considered as valid until June 2025 contributed to the fact that now AIMA is not facing the renewals as urgent. Of course, they are dealing with the renewals, but they don't face there's a priority there because the documents are still considered as being valid until the end of June. Besides that, there's a lack of appointment dates available. Actually, there's no slots for people to book their appointments, and it's very difficult and hard to get them. And so I do think that those contribute greatly for these problems. And besides that, the government has decided to split the powers of AIMA. AIMA is dealing at the same time as IRN, which is the Institute for Registries and Notary, with all these renewal processes. So combining both entities on the exact same process turns all the processing more difficult.
Okay, so do you think the government created this problem?
Yes, at a certain point I think so, because the government has decided to create AIMA in order to facilitate all the immigration processes. Actually, at the same time, they are splitting the powers throughout IRN, as I said, and it tends to be more difficult. The process tends to be more bureaucratic. And besides all of this, instead of going more online and trying to facilitate with automatic renewals, the government, since July 2024, has decided to go one step back, and now it's mandatory to go on site to do all the renewal.
Okay, so you used to be able to renew online, but they just did away with that. Now it has to be in person.
Sure, that's right. So after July 2024, IRN is the entity that deals with the renewals, and what they do is notify the applicant, and chronologically speaking, basically they go from chronological order and try to book the appointment for that specific person. But of course, there are people that they have their residence cards expired before August 2024 that still need to communicate or try to book an appointment both with the IRN or AIMA, depending on the type of residence card they want to renew.
Okay, so are you saying that people who expired, like their residency expired last August, they still don't have it? Or are those people caught up yet?
Some people might have, but others don't, okay?
Gosh.
Because, this feels to be a little bit random sometimes. There are people that were able to secure their appointments and others that didn't. And according to the IRN, they are doing this chronologically. After August, it is expected that everything is on order, but before that we are not sure that this is the case, actually, because we have some clients that were able to secure their appointments and their cards, for example, has expired after others that are still waiting for their times. That all depends on the entity that will deal with the appointment, basically if it's AIMA or the IRN, and also with the residence card itself, which residence card they are trying to renew.
Okay, now if someone's card has expired, are they technically living in Portugal illegally?
We can say that, yes, they are until the end of June 2025, this year. Yes, it's possible to say that this person is living legally in Portugal, no problems whatsoever. But after that date, we expect that the government will decide to extend this period for an additional period of 1 year. They normally make this decision in March, so it's expected that this will happen throughout this month, okay? But if it doesn't happen and the card gets expired and there's no way to extend the validity of the period, this person needs to book the appointment for the renewal. If that is not possible, that is not due to some problem related with the applicant itself, but from the administration of Portugal. So I would say that yes, they are not illegal. They might be in an irregular situation, like a limbo situation, but they shouldn't be afraid of any kind of deportation or something like that. They will be able to stay in Portugal while they are waiting for their appointment to come.
Okay. So before you said the government had this extension, which sounds like a good thing, but then it kind of almost turned into a bad thing because then now they're not prioritizing the renewals. So do you think if they extend it again, is this a good or bad thing?
I think that's the best solution. When you're facing the problems that we are facing right now in terms of all the backlog with the applications and also the lack of appointments available. So yes, that is necessary for all people to be relaxed on how they perceive their own legal status here in Portugal. And as you know, all the residence card, it's like an ID card. So it will bring you the possibility to access the courts, healthcare and other services. And so it's very important that this document is considered to be valid in Portugal. But at the same time, it brings you the other problem for those that are really looking for the renewal because they want to do the family reunification process or they are trying to actually travel outside Portugal or they have some urgent matters to deal with and they need the residence card to be valid on paper.
Yeah.
Actually, this might be a problem because the AIMA is perceiving this as, okay, let's wash our hands, everything is done right now, the document is considered to be valid, so we don't need to work on it right now. We can wait until the card actually expires. But for some people, this is not the case.
That's a problem.
Yes,
yeah.
And they really need to have the documents valid on paper.
Right. So then if they're not prioritizing renewals, are they prioritizing new applications or who's the priority right now?
Yes, I think so. So when you're looking for new appointments, they're definitely ahead of the renewals in terms of priority. And they are doing this because when people are in Portugal without any kind of residence card, that brings you a big problem. But when you have a residence card that is not valid on paper, but the government has extended the validity, then the problems are only related with the fact that people need to actually travel outside or do the family reunification process. When that is not the case, if they are okay on waiting and they have no intention to travel at all, then it's not a big problem for their lives, of course.
Mm-hmm. So do you think the government is doing enough to rectify the problem or they could be doing more?
I think they can do it more. What they are trying to do in terms of all the problems related with AIMA is to create new agencies, bring more people and more staff, hire more people, but it's not enough. The idea here to go one step back and bring the on-site applications once again, I think it's a very big problem that will bring for all people that want to do the renewals. Actually, it makes no sense when you are looking for where the problems of having an appointment nowadays, it's becoming so difficult to get them. They should keep the automatic renewals and not going back and trying to bring the on-site renewals once again. So I think the government is not looking so well for these specific problems, and they definitely should look and understand that are people that are really in a bad position here when they don't really have the residence cards valid in their hands.
Why do you think they went to getting rid of the online and having people do it in person?
Only explanation that comes up to my mind is that probably they were afraid that people were using the automatic renewal process without actually needing to renew the residence cards. Basically, there were people, of course, that were not complying with the rules of the minimum periods of stay required to renew the residence cards, and they were still able to renew it since it was automatic. They don't really need to show any documents or make any proof. So that's why I think the government has decided to go back and not keeping with the automatic renewals.
Okay. Do you foresee AIMA and IRN being able to get rid of this backlog, or do you think it's still going to be a long time before it starts running smoother?
So the backlog is a very big problem. AIMA has inherited more than 400,000 pending applications.
It's crazy.
Yes, it is. It is. And the government's plan was to deal with all of them until the end of July, I guess, 2025. I'm not seeing this happen at all, but I think that until the end of the year, we should see some changes on their procedures, and this might have a good impact on the backlog and might reduce the backlog. Until then, I don't expect very big changes because all of these changes with AIMA and the IRN, they are trying to figure it out their roles, yes, sometimes, and they don't even know from time to time which one would be dealing with that particular case. So sometimes it gets a little bit messy. You don't know which one will deal with your application. So they are still learning and trying to adapt to the new times.
Okay. All right. So you can't renew online anymore, but you can't get an appointment. So what does someone do?
You can try to book the appointment, okay? It's like calling AIMA, for example, it's the solution here, or trying to book it directly with the IRN for the area of residence. But for AIMA, for example, there were two different ways to approach these appointments for the renewals. Some people were trying to book it through an email and others calling, but now emails don't work at all. The inbox from AIMA is completely full.
Crazy, yeah.
So they are not accepting this procedure anymore. So you need to call them. For those clients that are really in need for some residence card to be valid because they want to travel, they want to do their family reunification, what we are advising them to do is basically to file an urgency request when they have the grounds to show that urgency. And sometimes when they are really in the rush and they really need this to be done, the appointment to be scheduled, we go to court basically and we file a legal action against AIMA in order to secure an appointment for them.
Okay, and you're finding that that is working?
Yes, that is working. The court is deciding in favor to our clients. Actually, the main reason for these legal suits is the fact that the people are in Portugal and they need to get out and their rights are being restricted, and or sometimes even they are in Portugal and they want to do the family reunification for their family. And the internal online portal from AIMA does not allow them to make any kind of family reunification without the cards valid. And so even if we have a rule in place that allows them to use the card as being valid until the end of June 2025, in practice, when you look into what is happening in reality, they don't really do it at all, so they cannot make any traveling or actually bring their family members to Portugal.
Right, that's a problem. Okay, so then how long does someone have to wait from the time that their card is expired to take legal action?
A very good question. So according to the law, it is possible to start the renewal process 3 months before the expiration date on the residence card.
Okay.
In practical terms, that possibility was taken away from the applicants, but according to the law, it's still possible to start it. So I would say that if they want to go to the court and make this legal action, they can do it 3 months before the expiration date of the card.
Okay. All right. And how much does something like this cost?
It depends, okay? It depends. Are you asking about the renewal or the legal action?
Let's do both. How
Okay.
much is a renewal?
Okay, so the renewal in terms of the fees for the government will depend on the type of residence card that you want to renew. But it can go, for example, from 200 euros up to 300 euros, more or less, okay? Unless you are talking about the renewal of a golden visa. And in that case scenario, you are talking about more than 4,000 euros for the renewal, okay?
Okay.
But not 4,000, but more or less. If you are looking for the legal action, actually the court will not require any court fees. This type of legal action is free of charge.
Okay.
Okay, so you will just handling the fees for the lawyer to deal with the legal action.
Okay. And what would be an acceptable range for lawyer fees?
That will depend as well. So it depends on the type of residence card that you want to renew. If you want the lawyer to be more proactive, or if it's okay for you to take your time, wait for IRN to notify you to book the appointment. So depends on the strategy, basically depends on the type of residence card, and depends on the process itself, okay? So I wouldn't say specific amount, and also because there's no specific terms or a table where you can find the exact amounts. This will depend greatly on the lawyer that is dealing and the strategy involved, okay?
Okay. Why do you think the golden visa is closer to 4,000 euros to renew compared to the others being 100, 200?
It's a different process. Since the beginning, the golden visa was the process that had the highest administrative costs. The fees are very high, and so it's normal that they are way higher than the others. If you ask me if the AIMA is actually getting a different service for the golden visa when comparing with others, my answer is no. Actually, they are facing the exact same problems in terms of the renewals, and so it makes no sense that they are paying more and not having a better service. Actually, sometimes they are getting a worse service when comparing with other residence cards. So yes, there's no specific reason. I guess this is what it is, and you have a table with all the administrative costs, and you can check on this and see that golden visa applicant and their family members need to pay very high fees for AIMA.
Wow, okay. All right, so let's say someone gets their appointment. Yay! What do they need to bring to the renewal appointment?
That will depend on the process and the type of residence card that you want to renew. But normally they will need to bring a proof of residence in Portugal, okay? And they need to show that they are living here. And they need to show the bank statements from a Portuguese bank account as well to show that they have enough money to support themselves. They normally need to prove that they meet the same conditions for the residence card that they own. For example, when you're looking for an entrepreneur that has created his own firm or an office or a company, it is necessary to show that the company is still running. Okay, so that's it. Or if you are a worker and you need to show that you are still having work contract with the company, you are paying your taxes in Portugal. It's what's necessary.
Now, what happens if someone comes in like on the D8, like a remote work, but while those first couple years they're here, they change jobs? Is that okay, even if it's a different job, like but still remote work?
Yes, that's okay. As soon as you have the residence card, you don't actually need to keep working for the same entities, okay? This is valid for all types of residence cards. You don't need to be working for the same entity, but definitely you should show to AIMA that you are still working remotely for another entity, okay? That's necessary. Sometimes this is not even required. You just need to show that you have enough money to support yourself here in Portugal, you are living here and paying taxes in Portugal. That's basically what they require.
Okay, so you could also come in on a remote job but then maybe retire, and as long as you show that you have finances and you're drawing off of pension, 401k, that even though it's passive rather than active, it would be okay because you show you have the money?
Yes, that should be okay. People are not required to keep their work or their activity throughout a 5-year-long period until they actually have the right to go for the permanent residence card or apply for the Portuguese citizenship. So that's something that they can do. And actually some people that are coming as retirees, they can start their professional activities here in Portugal as well. So this will not prevent them to work.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, it sounds a little daunting, you know, because we can't get renewal appointments and everything. What would be some advice that you would tell people as they approach this process?
I think the most important thing is to understand their priorities and what they require. If they are in need for some specific residence card to be valid because they need to travel regularly, then they should look into some legal solutions, asking for the help of a lawyer, trying to secure their appointments, request some urgency on their appointment, and that can be done through a lawyer. Of course, they can do it by themselves, but it's advisable to search for someone that already dealt with this case and knows what they're doing. So I would definitely recommend that if that is the case and the person does not or do not want to keep waiting for IRN to notify them while they don't really know when this will actually happen, it's advisable to go for a lawyer and ask them for some guidance.
On the podcast we had together, you said that the president of AIMA has come out and said there are 5,000 applications a day, which is well over 1 million a whole year. So how is that possible if there's only a little over 1 million foreigners in the country anyway?
I think that when he said so, he was referring to all sorts of applications, all sorts of residency applications. So we are talking about golden visas, people that are actually not relocating to Portugal, but there are others that are relocating to Portugal in the first stage of their move to other countries in Europe. And there is also the possibility that people are applying, but they are not getting the residence cards right then. And so they are waiting for a longer period. And it's possible that this doesn't really match with the amount of foreigners living in Portugal right now. So that is possibly why this is so strange when you hear it.
Okay, that makes sense. And if you would like to hear us talk more on the podcast about this, we unpack this and visas, much more, check it out right here. Now, let's get moving.